Hi everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. And this forecast is going to be a little bit of an extended one. We're going to cover Wednesday, May 20th, all the way through to Sunday, May 31st of 2020. And the reason that we're doing it this way is because I had kind of a hectic week last week, and that lasted into the weekend, and I was not able to get your forecast out on time for this really powerful new moon in the sign of Gemini. And I really want to cover this new moon for you. So I'm doing this forecast and releasing it midweek. And I'm going to extend this rather than doing like two forecasts back to back all the way through to the end of next week. And so instead of releasing another forecast on Saturday, I'm just going to smush these together, especially because next week there's not a lot of action going on in the astrology. I mean, there's stuff happening, but it's not going to be as crazy as some of the astrology that we are experiencing this week. So this week we have, as I'm recording this on Wednesday, a really powerful square between Venus and Neptune. And this is actually going to continue to build and continue to be a really predominant energy all the way through to the weekend, especially on Friday when we have this new moon in the sign of Gemini. And so the new moon in Gemini is happening at 2 degrees, and that means that it's going to be making a really nice trine with Saturn. And this is actually a very positive thing that's going to bring some grounded energy. It's going to help us to have some clarity of thought, some clarity and some structure in our communication. A lot of areas that have been very foggy and confusing and Neptunian recently, we might actually be able to get our feet on solid ground here. So that's going to help with offsetting some of the other experiences we'll be having this week, because Mercury is going to come into a conjunction with Venus, which typically is actually a really nice energy. When Mercury's with Venus, we tend to speak more fluently. We tend to articulate our thoughts in a way that's more well received, more poetic, nicer to listen to. We tend to have a more balanced way of approaching our decisions, our mindset around things, and the way that we interact with other people. And so that can actually be quite nice for communication. However, in this particular circumstance, Venus is in retrograde, and we actually have Venus still in a really tight square with Neptune. This Venus-Neptune square just never ends, you guys. This has been going on for several weeks now. We had Venus stationing in square with Neptune last week, and now we have Venus coming into that exact square with Neptune again by degree and by minute. And, it's going to start moving on after this, luckily, and we won't see it again until the end of July. I believe it's July 27th. When we have the final pass. But for right now, into this next week or so, we're still feeling this really foggy, confused energy. And this is bringing a lot of difficulty around getting clarity in relationships, in financial matters, in issues pertaining to material possessions, self-worth, that type of thing. We're also having a lot of issues, especially around interpersonal connections and communication, and the way that we connect on an intellectual level with people on an everyday basis. Contracts, agreements, negotiations, things like that can be part of it as well, because Venus is in the sign of Gemini. And Venus already has to do with agreements, negotiations, connections one-on-one with people, and that mercurial aspect of it with Gemini being involved, Gemini being ruled by Mercury, makes it so our communication can be a little bit off. There can be a lot of confusion. There can be a lot of lies and deception in our partnerships and in our relationships right now, and in our interactions with other people. Or it can just feel like we're kind of like underwater, or we're like in this sort of murky realm where there's just a straight up lack of clarity. It feels like things right now are not quite as clear as they should be. There's a lot of confusion going on, and when it comes to important interpersonal matters, it's best to kind of take a step back and wait, or even delay things if you can, especially if you're feeling uncertain or you're feeling unclear about something, just because this energy is very strong this week. And then we're going to have Mercury in the mix too. And so that brings this confusion on a mental level kind of to a head. I mean, it's already been building since Mercury moved into the sign of Gemini, but now it's coming into this position where lies, deception, deceit, confusion, delusion, where we're lying to ourselves about something, especially in an important relationship or an important material matter, something along those lines. These things are really coming up. And they're becoming very predominant this week. We're probably going to see a lot of craziness and confusing information coming across in the media and on social media. It's already been a thing for several weeks now, but it's going to get even weirder and even more confusing. And so if you hear something that alarms you, just know that it might not be true, and it probably isn't. If you hear something that's too good to be true, just know that it probably isn't. And so, just take things with a grain of salt as they come in when it comes to information this week, and especially at the end of this week and into the weekend. But really, this is going to be for the next couple of weeks. We're still going to be experiencing this. And so that's important to make note of. And in your personal life too, when somebody tells you something and it sounds really great and really awesome and you're really excited about it, maybe it feels like it's too good to be true. That's probably because it is, So you want to just make sure that you're being cautious in your communications with other people. Be cautious in the agreements that you make with people, because those are likely to come back around, and you'll find out that it's not exactly what you thought it was. Be cautious in entering into new relationships, of course, with Venus retrograde, because you're not going to have clarity around those connections and partnerships with other people. And be careful with what you say too this week, because you might unintentionally say something that misleads somebody, or you might be trying to say something in a way that's really nice, where you're being really considerate and compassionate of others, but you might be telling white lies, and that might actually not be the best approach right now. And also be with those agreements too, there's a tendency with Neptune being involved in this mix to become overly obligated to do things that you don't necessarily have the time, money, energy, whatever it is that you need to actually fulfill those obligations. And so you want to make sure that you're not just saying yes to something because you feel guilty about saying no, or you feel like you're in some way obligated to do whatever it is that you're agreeing to. You want to make sure that anything that you agree to, that you're going to be able to fulfill that obligation, because that's going to be a big thing. People are going to be making promises this week that they cannot keep, especially around the time of the new moon on Friday. And it's not necessarily that it's going to be with bad intent. The intentions are good. It's like you want to help people, you feel compassionate, you feel like or maybe you just feel obligated in some way to do so. But the intent is not to hurt somebody or to be flaky or to lie about what you can do. It could even be that you feel like you have the time, money, energy, whatever you need to actually fulfill those obligations. But when the time comes, it's not going to be there. So just make sure you're very clear and very grounded in anything that you say yes to. And that's going to be a big thing this week, especially. Into next week, Mercury is going to be moving on, and it's going to actually be transiting into the sign of Cancer. And so we're going to have Mercury no longer in its home sign of Gemini, and it's going to, on Thursday, the 28th, move into the sign of Cancer. This can actually be a nice thing. When people, when Mercury moves into Cancer, people tend to speak in terms of emotions and feelings, and they tend to approach their decisions a little less logically and a little bit more intuitively, in terms of like, this feels right, this doesn't, or they can make their decisions based on their emotions in the moment, which can be problematic in a lot of circumstances. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. People's language will become more supportive, more nurturing, more feeling oriented, as opposed to rational, logical, linear, that type of thing. And so the descriptive words people use tend to be more about their feelings. People want to talk about their emotions, their feelings, the hunches they have about things. Right before Mercury moves into the sign of Cancer, it's actually going to come into a conjunction with the North Node, and that's really what I wanted to focus on for next week here, or at least touch on. So when Mercury comes into a conjunction with the North Node, this is going to be the first really big activation, or at least the first planetary activation of the North Node in the sign of Gemini. And so the North Node just moved into Gemini a couple of weeks ago, and we haven't really seen a lot of action with the North Node yet. And so when we have a planet coming into a conjunction with another planet or a point that's making a long-term transit through another sign, when we have one of the inner planets do that, it kind of activates the energy of that planet or that point, and it shows us what's coming up through this next cycle or the rest of this transit. And so in this particular circumstance, the North Node is going to be transiting the sign of Gemini for the next 18 months, so the next year and a half or so. And this is going to show us, this is going to give us an idea of what's to come, and it's going to come through some sort of message. So we might get a message about, a direction we need to move into or an upcoming change. There might be signs and synchronicities. We might have some sort of fated occurrence or fated meeting with somebody, or some sort of knowledge or information that comes up in a way that feels synchronistic, that feels really important, but we really can't put our finger on why or where this is going to lead. This is going to, it's going to be fleeting. It'll probably be only like Wednesday, Thursday we'll be feeling this, but pay attention to messages that come up around this time, because it's giving you a clue as to what you need to pay attention to over this next 18-month cycle, where we're going to have the North Node in Gemini, the South Node in Sagittarius, and when we're going to have eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius, that's really going to amp up that energy, and it might actually bring forth something that's going to be like a culmination or an exacerbation of the small little minor detail that comes up for you this week. I should say next week. So this is sort of the first North Node activation that's going to give us, it's going to be something that we're going to receive more logically, mentally, or through some sort of important information, message, or communication. And so we want to pay attention to those themes and those types of things that could be delivered to us, especially if it feels important in a way that's unexplainable, or if it's associated with some sort of coincidence or synchronicity. That's really where the more important messages will come about for us next week. All right, and I do want to just make a couple of quick announcements before we get into the forecast for all 12 signs, because I have something really exciting to tell you guys about. So I told you guys before that I'm doing a donation-based webinar series throughout the rest of this year, where I'm going to be setting up some really incredible webinars with some really awesome people that I'll be collaborating with to help you guys navigate the crazy energy of this year and beyond, because the next couple of years we're going to be going through a lot of changes. Obviously, we already are on a global level. And so I want to do whatever I can to help you guys navigate and to make these resources available to as many people as possible. And so my next donation-based webinar is actually going to be a series of 3 webinars on June 9th and June 10th. And it's going to be centered on navigating career and business in times of economic crisis and change, especially through the lens of astrology. And so in this series, I'm going to be walking you through the astrology of this moment and into the next couple of years, and how that's going to impact certain industries, how that's going to impact business in general, how that's going to impact the job market, people's careers, and how you can sort of work with the energy and navigate it and incorporate certain things into your career and into your business to help you to stay afloat, to help you to be successful and to thrive through these times of change. The second part, I'm going to be teaming up with Ksenia Moore, who is a good friend of mine and one of my favorite astrologers. And we're going to be talking about career and business in the birth chart. So we're going to be talking about career and business on a more individual level. We're going to be looking at how you determine different aspects of your career path through your astrology. We're going to also especially focus on the difference between life's purpose and career, because those things can show up separately and differently in a person's chart. People tend to want to strive to connect their life's purpose with their career, but not everybody's purpose is associated with their work. And so that's a big thing that we're going to focus on. So we're going to help you guys to figure out, what types of career paths might be suitable for you, how to navigate career and business, and to get satisfaction through the work that you're doing, even if it's not necessarily connected to your purpose, even even if your purpose is to create a good home and family life, or to be an artist separate from working or something along those lines, we're going to help you to navigate whatever's in your chart in the best possible way. And then finally, the third part of this webinar is going to be with my personal business coach, Rita Perea, who's going to show up and give you guys her best stuff, her best information about navigating personal and professional change, and to help you to kind of figure out what's going on now and how to work with the energy and how to thrive during these times of change. And so I'm super, super excited about this. This is like a really great team we have here that's putting together this presentation for you guys, and we're covering a lot of ground. And so that's why we're splitting it up into 3 parts. And this is a donation-based webinar, so you pay what you can. There's a suggested donation, but I want this to be available to as many people as possible. And so the link to register in advance is down in the description below. I highly recommend registering. I feel like it's going to fill up quite quickly. The last one I did really took off, and it filled up very fast. And so you can find that down in the description below. The other thing I just want to mention real quick is that my summer electional astrology guide is now available for all of you to download and view and benefit from, so you can plan your summer, so that way you can be successful in whatever it is that you want to accomplish this summer. Electional astrology is the art of choosing good timing based on the astrology to enhance the intentions behind whatever it is you want to accomplish. And so this summer there are some windows, there are some openings where there won't be as many in the fall, and so I want you guys to be able to take advantage of that. And so the link to that guide is down in the description below as well. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you guys about that webinar. I'm really excited about. These donation-based webinars are something that I'm really excited for. It wasn't something I was planning to do this year, but with everything that happened, it seemed like, a good opportunity to collaborate with some people that I've been wanting to collaborate with, and to deliver information to you guys that's going to be way more in depth than what I do here on this channel. All right, so the forecast for all 12 signs. Let's find this here, my zodiac signs. All right. So let's start with Aries and Aries rising. So for Aries and Aries rising, this energy let's start with the square, because this is building. We've talked about this quite a bit actually in the past few forecasts, but I want to just talk about Mercury coming into the mix. So there might be some confusing communication or messages that are coming in this week that could cause some disharmony or some disruption in an important relationship. You might have a message that comes in or a communication that comes in from somebody from your past that you have to pay attention to. And it could be kind of confusing, like, why is this person contacting me? What is going on here? What is this all about? Or you might be misled. You might think, oh, this person wants to come back in my life. Their intentions are pure, and they might not be so pure. So you want to pay attention to that and just make sure that you're staying grounded, and that you're making sure that you're not jumping into something or agreeing to something or becoming obligated to do something or to reconnect with somebody in some way that you're not necessarily going to be able to follow through with. This new moon energy is happening also in your 3rd house, and this is in a really nice trine with Saturn, which is retrograde right now in your 11th. This is a really great time to reach out and communicate with people who are really solid, and to set intentions for communications, marketing plans, networking, for your business or for your job or something along those lines, to do something that's going to involve connecting with people or collaborating with people that has some sort of long-term benefit, where your aim is to make connections that are going to stand the test of time. So you might want to reintegrate some people back into your life from your past that maybe you have fallen away from, or where those relationships haven't had the attention that they deserve, something along those lines. You might want to reach out and communicate with somebody. You might want to join some sort of group or organization, even if it's online, for networking or collaboration. This is just a really great time to set intentions to have a better sense of community, even like on a grassroots level in your immediate environment, and to think about what types of relationships and friendships and group associations that you want to have moving forward that are going to be solid and that are going to have your back over the next couple of years. And so it's a powerful time to set intentions for that. Anything involving communication, anything involving community, maybe even something involving like a small travel plan. Like maybe you really want to get away when there is an opening or an opportunity to do so in a way that's, safe and that's allowed or whatever. And so you're setting intentions for a small road trip or a camping trip with a small group of people or something like that. Like now's the time where you can set those intentions and, you know, they might actually pan out and they might be solid for you. For Taurus and for Taurus rising. So this energy here with Venus and Mercury, this is happening actually in your second house, which is the house of finance. And so you might get a message about something financial. You might get a message about your credit card statement. You might get a message about your bank account or your paycheck, or, you know, maybe some sort of, you know, funding that's coming in or something along those lines that is confusing or misleading in some way. And so you want to be very careful, and especially when it comes to making important investments or important purchases. Right now when Venus is in retrograde, it's not necessarily the best time to jump into something new involving your finances. And so if an opportunity comes up to sort of invest your money or move your money around or to buy something you've been really wanting to buy that's a major investment, and it seems too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. So it might come back around and sort of bite you later when Venus goes direct. So you want to pay attention to that. You might have some confusing messages around anything involving finances, even just like confusing bills or phone calls or something along those lines. And so you want to just kind of wait and see if you can. This isn't the time to just jump in and do something all crazy. But this is a really great time to think about your financial plans, to rebalance your budget, to visualize what you want for the future, like we talked about in the last forecast for Venus retrograde. If you haven't watched that, by the way, I recommend that you do it. It's a forecast for the next 6 weeks with the Venus retrograde. So it extends way beyond last week, and it's relevant to this too. So, but yeah, there could definitely be some confusion around finances, some weird messages around finances. Your budget might all of a sudden be completely out of balance and you're not sure what you did or how you made that happen. And so you want to just tread lightly. Don't make any important decisions if you can avoid it. And if you have to make important decisions, think about it very carefully before you move ahead. And then the energy with this new moon is happening also in your area of finance. And this is actually in a really nice trine with Saturn, which is in your 10th house. And this is a really great time for you to set intentions for your long-term goals and plans in your career and also in your financial area. And so basically, what do you want your career to look like? You're going through a major restructuring where there's a lot of hardship, a lot of challenge, where you're going to have to really be pushing to create what you want for yourself when it comes to career. There's going to be a lot of work ahead of you. And so what do you want that to look like in the end? And what are your financial goals? Because now is a really great time for financial goal setting and also visualizing what you want. And you can make really solid concrete goals, and that can actually manifest into something. Also, you're going to have Mercury hitting the North Node next week, and that's actually going to be, what was that, on the 28th, I think is Thursday. Let me double check that. Yeah. So on Wednesday and Thursday of next week, on the 27th and the 28th, you might get an important sort of fated message about where things are headed for you financially. That might come through like your own insight. That might come through an actual verbal message or a letter or something like that. But it's going to feel important. It'll feel kind of synchronistic. It'll be small, but it'll be important. And that's something that it's a thread that you're going to continue to follow for the next 18 months. All right, and for Gemini and for Gemini rising, this energy with Mercury conjunct Venus is actually happening in your sign. So especially if you're a Gemini rising or sun or moon sign, anywhere near that 20th degree, you're going to be feeling this the most, and it's going to bring the most confusion probably. And so this is an energy where you're probably getting some mixed messages or some confusing communications that are coming to you very directly. They could be related to your work, your career path, or something to do with your connection to people in positions of power and authority. But whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of confusion. You could just be experiencing confusion about who you are and what your direction is in life right now. And the information that's coming to you isn't really helping that. This is also a time where you might say or do something that might mislead somebody, and you might be unintentionally deceitful. And so you want to be very careful in choosing your words. And this is a time where you could very personally become very obligated to do something that you might not have the ability to actually carry out. And so you might have to flake on your obligations, and that could actually take a hit to your reputation and the way people see you. So you want to be very, very careful about what you agree to at the end of this week. The other thing that you have going on is that there's a new moon in the sign of Gemini. And so this is a great time for you to set intentions for anything that you want to accomplish or to achieve, especially if you have some sort of long-term travel goals or goals related to education, publishing, maybe teaching if you want to, start teaching or, doing some sort of online courses or something like that. These are things that you can start setting intentions for. Whatever your own personal goals and plans are for the future, for the long term, now's a time where you should set those intentions, and they might actually stick, and they might be with you for the long term. And so thinking about how you can restructure your life so it's more in alignment with your personal value systems and integrity, and what goals you can set around that would be an important thing to think about this new moon, which is on Friday. Next week on Wednesday and Thursday, you're going to have Mercury coming into a conjunction with the North Node, which is also in your sign. This will be especially prominent if you are a Gemini rising or Sun or Moon sign at the very end degrees, so near that 29th degree. So anywhere really from 25 to 30 degrees, you'll be feeling this the most. And this is going to be a very important message that'll come in for you personally, and it'll come to you personally. This could be somebody showing up and saying something. This could be an email or a phone call or some sort of like strange, mysterious message that comes in. Or this could be just be an insight or something that you think about that feels important and that almost gives you this sense of deja vu. Like, did I think this thought in this exact way with this exact person this last time or something like that? There's going to be some sort of sign synchronicity, something that's going to come to you on a mental level that's going to be an indicator of the changes that you're going to be making when it comes to your direction in life, because your whole life is going to change over the course of this next 18 months with the North Node transiting through Gemini. And I did a forecast for this too. So if you haven't watched that, go back into my playlist for the weekly forecast, and I have an 18-month forecast for the North and South Node for you. But this is going to give you an indicator, so you want to pay close attention to those messages, signs, and synchronicities next week. For Cancer and for Cancer rising, this Mercury-Venus conjunction is happening in the 12th house. You might have some sort of maybe hidden secrets or negotiations that are going on behind closed doors or behind the scenes in your life right now. You might be connecting or collaborating with somebody in secret or meeting with somebody in secret. And, this could be a good thing, but you might not necessarily know the intentions or know what the outcome's going to be. So you want to just be very careful with those types of things. This is one of the best energies for creative contemplation, creative writing, turning inward, journaling, getting things that you're digging up from your subconscious realms and making them manifest through like on an intellectual level, right? So understanding things that are going on a deeper level, or creating something using language or artwork or something along those lines. You might get some weird messages in your dreams that are very overt. And so they might be confusing though. It's like, I know this means something, but what does this actually represent? I know this is important, but how do I use this information that's coming to me through these subconscious realms, through these other realities, through my dreams, through my meditations or whatever it is. This new moon is happening in the 12th house, and this is actually going to be a really important time for endings and letting go. The new moon, it's a beginning, but it's also an ending. And so this is you closing out a cycle that you're kind of wrapping up and letting go of. And so this is going to be you thinking about what you need to end, what you need to let go of, what psychological and emotional attachments you've been holding on to that have been controlling your behavior, from the inside out. What do you need to let go of in terms of fears and anxieties that are connected to your past? Those types of things. And what do you need to let go of on a physical level, so that way you can have more freedom, so that way you can have more control, so you can feel more empowered? These are questions you should be asking yourself around the time of the new moon on Friday. And then next week, you're going to have Mercury coming into a conjunction with the North Node in your 12th house. There's so much 12th house energy. I feel like Cancers are just going to be like sucked inward this week. If you're not already in solitude, if you're not already, on lockdown and, spending time at home, social distancing, all of that, because you have some sort of job that, allows you to go out in the world, you're going to really want to be pulling inward. You're really not going to want to be communicating externally. This is a great time this weekend and into next next week to really just spend some time on your own, do some soul searching, and some really important messages can come in for you that can give you an indication of what the North Node in the sign of Gemini transiting your 12th house is going to be pulling you into, in terms of spiritual practices, in terms of a new direction, in terms of inner development over the next 18 months. All right, and Leo rising. So for Leos, this energy with the Venus-Mercury conjunction is happening in your 11th house, which is the house of friendship and social networks and connections with groups of people. This is a time where you might get some really confusing messages from your friends. You might have like somebody who reaches out to you from the past and you think their intentions are good and you're really excited to reconnect, and things might not pan out the way that you think. You might find that you get a message from a group or an organization that you're a part of that's really confusing and that leads you astray and leads you in the wrong direction. You might find yourself wanting to help your friends in some way or help a friend in some way and becoming obligated to do something that you can't necessarily live up to, that you don't necessarily have the time or the energy to actually do, right? And so you might have to flake. So you want to be very careful about what you agree to and also what you say to your friends, because you might unintentionally be lying to them in some way or send messages to them that could be really confusing, and that could cause a disruption or a difficulty in your friendship. If you do lose friends over this week, which I don't think is necessarily the biggest energy here, but if something does happen where there's a dispute, an argument, where there's a disagreement, or there's a miscommunication that causes a friendship to fall away, because Venus is in retrograde, that's probably not going to stick, so they'll come back into your life, and so that's a good thing to kind of make note of. But yeah, so you want to just be careful about what you say and the way that you say it this week. The new moon is happening in the sign of Gemini, though, on Friday. So this is a really great time to set intentions for really solid, long-lasting relationships, especially on that friendship level. So you want to really set intentions to find your tribe, to find the right people, to find those friendships that are going to be really solid and long-lasting, that are going to stick with you and stand the test of time. And that's going to be, I think, an important part of this energy for you for the new moon. And this could even be a time to set intentions to create some sort of long-term partnership or long-term relationship that's beyond a friendship. But this is mostly going to be centered more around platonic relationships. And so, what do you want? What type of friends do you want to surround yourself with? Is there gossip and lies and deceit going on in your social circle? Do you want to keep on with that? Do you want to keep those types of friendships? Or do you want people that are going to be more truthful, honest, open, that are going to have your back? Those are things to think about around the time of this new moon on Friday. And then next week on the 27th and the 28th, you're going to have Mercury coming into a conjunction with the North Node in your 11th house. And this is going to give you a taste of the fated new transitions that you're going to be moving into, the fated occurrences that you're going to be experiencing in the realm of friendships and connections with groups of people that you surround yourself with by choice. And so you're moving into a time where you're going to be finding a new tribe. And so this is going to give you a hint as to what that's going to look like, or you might even get a message from a group or an organization you've been thinking about joining or connecting with. And so that could be really important, and it could show you where things are headed for you into the future for the next 18 months. And then for Virgo and for Virgo rising. So for Virgo, this energy with Mercury and Venus is happening in your 10th house, which is the house of career and public reputation. And so there's a lot of confusion around your career path, your career goals, things that you're doing out in the public right now, where you're getting mixed messages, miscommunications, a lot of just murkiness and uncertainty. And that's going to be coming up for you, especially around work-related connections, like one-on-one connections with people, or with even with like your bosses and things like that, because this is up in the 10th house. So you could get a really confusing email or phone call from somebody who employs you or a former employer with that Venus retrograde. You can have a really confusing message or conversation with like a business partner or a former business partner or somebody that you used to connect or contract with or collaborate with in some way for your business. And, you're going to want to either agree to something or to shrug something off and say no to it, but you're not going to have all the information to fully understand the situation in a way that's going to allow you to make the best decision for yourself and for your career path. And so if this is the case and this comes up for you, you want to just take some time if you can, and think things through before you give an answer, because you might obligate yourself to do something that you can't fulfill, or you might do the opposite and say no to something that turns out to be a really great opportunity that you missed. So you want to make sure that you're very clear on that. And then the other thing that's going on here is that you have a new moon that's occurring in your 10th house. And this is actually going to be in a really nice trine with Saturn in your 6th. Saturn in your 6th is it's putting limitations and restrictions on your work. Very literally, this could be a limitation or restriction on an office or your property or your workspace. And so it's like you're not working where you're working before. And, your actual workspace could be restricted or limited in some way. Limitations and restrictions with your connections to employees, or to coworkers, that type of thing. And so you've been dealing with, having to restructure your day-to-day life, your day-to-day work routines, that type of thing. And so that's part of what's been going on for you. But now it's a time to kind of look at the big picture. What do you want your career to look like moving forward? What are your biggest goals and plans, and how can you structure your day-to-day experience in a new way that's going to allow for that to occur? That's what you should really be focusing on for this full moon. What are your career goals and plans, and what are the steps you need to take to get there? And how can you take this what looks like a challenge and what looks like a hardship and turn it into an opportunity to build something new for yourself that's going to further your career goals and plans, and that's going to create a solid, long-lasting platform for the future. That's the Virgo energy for this week. The other thing that's going on next week is that Mercury is going to be coming into a conjunction with the south or with the North Node in your 10th house of career, and that's going to happen on the 27th and the 28th. And so you're going to be feeling this energy here where you might get a message that feels fated, that's really important, that kind of pulls you in a new direction or guides you into considering a new direction or making some sort of change when it comes to your career. And so your career is going through a lot of changes for Virgos, and this is sort of the first step or the first initiation into it. You're going to get some sort of insight or some sort of important message that's going to feel synchronistic. It's going to feel fated. It's going to feel important, like it's pulling you somewhere. And pay attention to that, because that's going to come back up for you over the next year and a half. All right, and then for Libra and for Libra rising, this Mercury conjunction to Venus is happening in your 9th house, which is the house of your beliefs about God, the universe, the world around you, your integrity. There could be important messages that come in. For Libras, this is actually a nicer energy than it is for a lot of the other signs, just because this is happening in a nice trine with your ascendant. So if you're a Libra rising or sun or moon with your ascendant, sun or moon around that 20th degree, so I would say really anywhere from 15 to 25 degrees, this could be experienced as a really positive message that comes in, or a really positive sensation, or a positive energy around being liked or being recognized or feeling more charismatic, or being able to share your ideas more freely with others and having those beliefs, those ideas be way more well received. You might have an opportunity to go back and teach somebody something, or to teach somebody something, or to redo some sort of certification or education. And that could be of a lot of benefit to you. There could be a little murkiness or confusion around it, but I think for you in particular, it's not going to be as difficult. If there is difficulty, it's going to be like a lot of confusion around your beliefs and your ideologies. It's like you thought things were one way, you had this big picture of the way the world worked, and new information comes in and it just completely throws you for a loop, and it's very confusing to your worldview. You might not have all of the information, so don't go changing everything just yet. But also don't think that you know everything in terms of like, this is the way that I believe things are, and so it must be so, because there's something there that you need to reevaluate. And that reevaluation could come through an interaction or an interpersonal relationship with somebody. The new moon is happening in your 9th house, and this is going to be a really important time for you to set really solid intentions around your educational goals and plans, really solid, long-lasting intentions for your long-term goals for the future when it comes to travel, right? What is that going to look like for you? Were you planning a lot of travel and now all of a sudden you had to change your plans? What are your goals and intentions? What are you going to do with that? How are you going to change that? How are you going to create a better system or situation for yourself in the future, so whatever happened this time around maybe doesn't happen next time around? Those types of things. Those are things to contemplate and think about when you're setting your intentions for the new moon in Gemini. The other thing that's going on is that the North Node is being activated also in Gemini. And so this is going to be happening on Wednesday and Thursday of next week when Mercury comes into a conjunction with the North Node. And so this is going to be the first taste where you're going to get some sort of important message, some sort of important inspiration or insight that comes into you that feels fated, synchronistic, that feels like it was meant to be. This could be involving a connection to a foreign country or somebody in a foreign country. This could be an urge to travel or to move to a different location. This could come through an invitation or a message or some sort of even like advertisement that you see for a new educational pursuit that you hadn't thought of before, but it feels super important. It doesn't mean that you launch into it right now, but it means that it's something to pay attention to. For Scorpio and for Scorpio rising. So this energy with Venus and Mercury is happening in your 8th house, which is the house of which is the house of debt and other people's money. And so this could be a confusing message that comes in around your partner's resources, around taxes, around some sort of debt or some sort of bill. This could be around insurance or inheritance or something along those lines where you get some really confusing financial advice even, or some confusing financial information. And I mentioned before, like with this Venus square Neptune, that was already happening. We got a bunch of really confusing bills. And my husband's work, there was like a lot of confusion and stuff too. So that was already happening. So I'm interested to see what happens with this. More weird bills, right? Weird bills. That would be very literal in the mail, right? Mercury, you receive a bill and it's like, what the hell is this? And you have to kind of go in and try to talk to somebody. This could be a difficult time in interpersonal communication, trying to get financial matters sorted out. And so it could be that you're calling, your bank, or you're calling your employer, or you're calling your insurance company, and you're not getting the right information, or the information that you're getting is misleading or confusing in some way, or you're not delivering the right information. And so you're the one that's confused and you're causing the problem and not even realizing it. Those could all be, issues that come up this week. This is not the best week to make important financial decisions, especially joint financial decisions in partnership with somebody else, or important decisions involving investments. I would hold off on, because you're not seeing the whole picture, and that's going to come back and bite you later on. And so that's important to make note of as well. This could be where an important message comes up, or in communication or in relationship to somebody, where it brings up a lot of fear, or it brings up some of your deep-seated anxieties. And you have to kind of think about that. You have to work through it, but it's kind of confusing. It's muddled. It's like, why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? How do I deal with this? And that's going to be something that you'll gain clarity on as we move forward into the next couple of weeks. The new moon is happening in your 8th house, and this is actually in a really nice trine with Saturn, which is in your 4th house of home and family. This is a really great time to set intentions for, first off, anything that you want involving like maybe a loan for a home or something like that. Your intentions for your joint financial plans with your partner, for investments, for growing your money, for paying off debts, so that way you can have a much better solid foundation for the future for yourself and for your family. These are things that you can really think about and really take hold of, and that you should be thinking about and sort of contemplating around the time of the new moon on Friday. The other thing that's going on is that the North Node is coming into your 8th house, or has already entered into your 8th house, and it's being activated by Mercury next week on Wednesday and Thursday, so the 27th and the 28th. You could get a very fated, very important message related to joint finances, related to an important investment, related to a different direction that you need to move into financially. That could be more collaborative, or that could have to do more with crowdfunding or getting money from an outside source. And so if that comes up for you, pay attention to that, because that's not necessarily something that's all going to happen right now, but it's important, and it's a thread that you're going to continue to follow for the next 18 months. It could even be like a new way of dealing with debt, or something involving a will or an insurance policy that comes up for you, and it seems like important, but at the time you don't know why, but you'll feel it. And so that's how you'll know that this is the thing that you need to pay attention to, because it's going to come back around. So keep that little seed in your mind for the future. For Sagittarius and for Sagittarius rising, Let's see here. This energy is all happening in your seventh house, which is relationships, negotiations, interpersonal connections. This is a time where you could get a message that comes in from a family member, maybe that you haven't spoken to in quite some time, because this is going to be a Mercury-Venus conjunction squaring Neptune, and it could be kind of confusing or misleading in some way. There could be lies or deception involved in this communication, and so you want to be very careful and tread lightly. You also want to make sure that you're not the one lying to or deceiving somebody unintentionally. Also, don't make promises that you can't keep in any relationships right now, and especially when it involves your family members. So if somebody asks you to do something, you have a close friend or you have a family member that's like, hey, I really want you to do this thing, and you feel like, oh, I feel guilty if I don't do this, I have to do it, and you agree to it. If something like that comes up and you do make those agreements, you're going to have to flake, or it's likely that you're going to have to flake. Not every single person. This is for all Sagittariuses, but it's likely that you might have to flake on your obligations, and that's not going to bode well. So you want to make sure that you're being very clear and very deliberate in the agreements that you make this week, and make sure that these are things that you really want. And especially don't make new agreements. You could revise old agreements, but again, you still need to be very clear. Like, this is not a time where you're going to have all the information or all the insight. It's going to feel murky, and so you need to take that into account. If you can hold off, maybe do it. Maybe hold off. The other thing that's happening is that there's a new moon in the seventh house, and this is going to be in a really solid trine with Saturn in your third. This is a really great time to make intentions, to set intentions for important collaborations, to communicate with important people. This would be a really great time to set intentions involving partnership that has to do with anything involving like schooling or education or learning new skill sets or communication or marketing or something along those lines, collaboration involving communication or education. This would be a really great time to set any intentions for long-lasting, solid intentions for the future of your relationship. So if you're in a relationship, set really solid intentions for what you want that relationship to look like in the long term. How can you make it more solid? How can you create a better foundation for yourself? If you're not in partnership, you might want to set intentions to create a solid, long-lasting partnership and to have that communication come in for you. And that would be something that you can think about. What do you want your relationship to look like? And how do you want that to feel? What on a practical level, what do you want that relationship to be like? That type of thing. The other thing that's going on is that the North Node is in your seventh house as well. And so Mercury next week on the 27th and the 28th will be coming into a conjunction with the North Node in your seventh house. And this is going to be an activation. And so this is going to give you the first taste of where things are headed in your relationships. You're going to be going through a lot of changes personally and interpersonally over the next 18 months, which I talked about in the forecast for the North and South nodes shifting into Gemini and Sagittarius. You can find that back on my YouTube channel on the playlist for the weekly forecasts. But this one in particular, you're going to be moving into a new direction. New relationships are going to come in that feel fated, that feel really important. Your current relationships are going to move into a completely new direction. You're going to be forming new partnerships that are going to be fated, that are going to be, for a reason, that are going to suck you into a completely new path in life. And you're going to be letting go of a lot of the way things were or the way that you think that things should be when it comes to your own personal development, your own goals and orientations in life. And Mercury is going to be activating this. So you might get an important message that comes in from somebody new who you've never spoken to before, and it feels really important. You might get an important communication with your current partner that feels really important, or some sort of letter that comes in that involves both of you. There's something that's coming in here that is going to be shifting your partnerships, and so you want to be paying close attention to what comes in the realm of communication, or even just insight and ideas and thoughts that you have around your relationships next week. For Capricorn and for Capricorn rising, This energy with Mercury and Venus is happening in your 6th house, which is the house of health, work, and daily routines. And so it can feel like your work life is super, super confusing. You might be getting really weird, strange communications and messages from your employees, your coworkers, people that, you work with in general, contractors, things like that, where it's like you don't know what's what and you don't know who's telling the truth and you don't know how to deal with these situations or how to respond to the information that's coming in. It can feel very foggy, very confusing. This is also a time where you're going to want to take a mental vacation from your work, where your head's not going to be in the game. And so if you're able to kind of take a step back, if you're able to relax, if you're able to step away from the day-to-day reality of your job situation, now is a time where you should definitely do that, or at least shift into something that's a little bit more routine or something that's like more creative, because this could be utilized for creative types of communication. Like, if you write copy, or if you like do any sort of writing that's creative in any way for the work that you do, now is a time where that can be enhanced. But you want to double and triple check your work, because Neptune's going to, bring some confusion there. But this is mostly, I think, going to be about interpersonal connections in the workplace or related to your work. This could also be confusing messages that come in around your health. And so if you get some sort of a diagnosis, or if you get some sort of health information that comes in, even if it's not from a doctor, but it's like information that you learn about health, maybe on the internet or something like that, and it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And it's not going to be the miracle cure that you think it will be. And on the flip side, if you get some bad news, it could be kind of confused. Like, it might not be the whole picture. You might not have the whole story. And so things might change. The other thing that's going on here, and this is, by the way, not a good week to like go on WebMD and like list all your symptoms or something like that. Like, your mind's going to go to crazy places. Don't do that. That's going to confuse everything. If that's something that you are prone to doing or thinking about doing because you're having some sort of health issue, definitely don't do that this week. Or in general, that's not good to do, but especially right now, that's going to lead you like very astray. But anyway, the new moon is happening in your 6th house. This is a really good time to set goals and intentions for what you want your day-to-day work life to look like, what you want your day-to-day habits and routines to look like. If you've been thinking that you really need to set some solid health goals and routines, especially around food and nutrition, now's a time that you can do that and lock it in, and it's going to last for the long term for you. And your long-term financial goals and plans too, thinking about how you can work toward those goals in small, measured ways on a day-to-day basis. Incorporate those goals into your daily routines and your daily work habits, and that's going to help to prime you for success moving forward. Next week, you're going to have Mercury conjunct the North Node. I keep calling it the South Node because when I draw this, it doesn't flip. So when I get to the other side of the zodiac, it looks like the South Node in the drawing. I have this badly drawn astrology wheel that I always use that gets me in trouble sometimes. But anyway, the North Node is in your 6th house, and so Mercury is going to come into a conjunction with the North Node on Wednesday and Thursday, and that's going to be a time where you could get an important fated message around ways that you're going to be developing your health, or changes that are going to be occurring related to your work and your daily habits and routines that you need to pay attention to. So, it could be a verbal message, it could be a written message, it could be just some sort of insight or inspiration or thought that you have that feels really important. Make sure that you pay attention to that, because that thread, you're going to continue to follow it over the next 18 months. For Aquarius and for Aquarius rising, this Mercury-Venus conjunction is happening in your 5th house, which is the house of play and joy. It's a fun house. And this is another sign where that Mercury-Venus conjunction is going to treat you a little bit more nicely than some of the other signs. And so especially if you're an Aquarius sun, moon, or rising, with your sun, moon, or rising near that 20th degree, I would say anywhere from 15 to 25, you'll be feeling this in a more positive way. This could be really positive communication. This could be a time for you to be imaginative and to go out and have fun and play a little bit more. This could be a time for romance, where an old flame comes back around and sends you a message, and that can feel really fun and exciting. It might not last, and it might be kind of more of a fantasy, but it can be fun during this time, right? It's not necessarily going to hurt you to indulge in that. What could hurt you to indulge in is overspending on things that are pleasurable that you don't necessarily need, offers that are too good to be true when it comes to purchases, especially purchases for things that feel good or that are fun or that are related to a hobby or an interest or a passion of yours that are not necessarily practical, that can get you in a bind and kind of suck your resources. So you want to be careful about offers that are too good to be true there. The new moon is happening in your 5th house also. So this is a really great time for you to think about how you can set intentions for connecting more with your passions, setting intentions for things that are related to your children and your long-term goals and plans related to the way that you raise your children and connect to them. Thinking about setting intentions for indulging in new hobbies, new interests, creative passions and pursuits, but using them in a way that can be practical and that you can maybe incorporate into your experience, maybe even through your work. Maybe you're thinking about starting a business that's related to something that you've been doing as a hobby or as a side hustle for quite some time. Now's the time where you can set the intentions for that. It's not necessarily the time to like start it, but to set those intentions and to set those seeds. The North Node is transiting your 5th house. And so Mercury is going to be coming into a conjunction with the North Node on Wednesday and Thursday of next week, where you're going to be experiencing some sort of fated message or some sort of fated information that comes in that leads you in a new direction when it comes to pursuing your passions, pursuing the things that you love to do. It's going to show you where you need to go in order to find your joy. And this is going to be a thread or a path that you're going to continue to follow and develop and move into over the course of the next 18 months. It might show up in a very small way. It might just be a fleeting thought, but it feels urgent or important in some way. Hold on to that, because it's going to come back around for you in the future. All right, and then for Pisces and for Pisces rising. For Pisces, this Mercury-Venus conjunction is happening in your 4th house, which is the house of home, family, and property. And so this is a time where there could be a lot of confusing communication from your family members or in your home environment that's coming in right now. This could be confusing messages or even paperwork or some sort of letter that comes in involving your house, involving your home, very literally involving your property or a lease agreement that you need to kind of navigate and work through and figure out. And it's kind of murky as to how you're going to go about doing that. If that's the case, if you can give it some time because clarity will come. It's just not going to come right now. There can be a lot of miscommunication with family members, and so tread lightly when it comes to dealing with family right now. You might find yourself obligating yourself to do something or to show up in a way that you actually can't because you don't have the time or the energy or the ability to do so, and so you might have to flake on those obligations. Don't say yes to things when it comes to your family, especially your parents, because you feel guilty, because again, you might not be able to sustain those obligations, and so you just want to be cautious there. The other thing that I should say is that this could actually be a good time to like redecorate or to sort of reevaluate your home environment in some way. Creative projects in the home could actually be a really good way to utilize this energy. The new moon is happening also in your 4th house, and so this is a lot of energy around home and property. What do you want when it comes to your home? What do you want to come home to after work? What do you want your home environment to look like for the long term? How are you going to create a fun, exciting sort of sanctuary space for yourself? So in the future, if you get stuck at home again for an extended period of time, you can actually enjoy being there. How are you going to keep it interesting for yourself? Because you got that Gemini 4th house energy. How are you going to make sure that you're not bored, right? So what do you want your home environment to look like? What do you want your family dynamic to look like moving forward? Especially when it comes to like the long term, what do you see for yourself in regards to home and family in the near and also distant future? Because this is the time to set intentions for that at the end of this week. The other thing that's going to be happening is next week on Wednesday and Thursday, the Mercury will come into a conjunction with the North Node, which is also in your 4th house. And so something's going to be changing for you when it comes to your home, your property, your place of living. And you're going to be moving into a new direction. You could very literally be moving. And so it could be a message like, with all of this going on here, it's kind of likely for a lot of Pisces that you're thinking about moving, you're thinking about that going to a completely new location even, or at the very least moving to a new home that's more in alignment with what you desire in this new path that you're heading into. Whatever it is, you're going to figure it out at least a little bit this week. It'll come up for you. And so you'll have that little inspiration, or you'll have like an important message that comes through. It could even be an advertisement for like a home that you see that's on the market, and you're like, ooh, that's kind of what I want. Maybe I should follow this. Maybe I should put it on my watch list. Maybe I should contact that realtor. It's not necessarily the time to like move on it for most people. I shouldn't say that the case for everyone. Some of you guys can do this, but it's time to pay attention. This could also just have to do with your family dynamic and some sort of change or a new direction that you're moving into when it comes to your family. And so this could be like a faded message, like maybe, there's somebody's talking about children or pregnancy, and it just sticks out to you. And then later on down the line in the next 18 months, you add a member to your family, right? These types of things could be coming up for you as well. It could even be involving like a pet, like there's this dog that you see that's for adoption, and you're like, oh, I really like that dog, but I don't know if it's right. And then a couple of weeks later it comes back around, or a couple months later it comes back around, and you end up adopting that pet or a different pet. Like anything involving something new in your home, bringing fresh energy into your home. If you get like a communication, a message from somebody, or from like very literally like a message that comes in, or even just a thought that feels especially important, pay attention to that, lock into that, because that's a thread you're going to continue to follow over the next 18 months. All right. And so that is my forecast for all 12 signs. It's a little bit extended, but hopefully, hopefully that's okay. I did it like at a different time than I normally do. I know a lot of you guys wait for me every Saturday morning, and I'll be back next Saturday. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday at my usual time, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. For those of you who are new to this channel, I do release a new weekly forecast every single Saturday, typically at 9 a.m. And so you can kind of look out for that. Subscribe to my channel. Make sure you like this video if you liked it, and share it with your friends if you think that they could, use this information in some way. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.